Good morning. So we are talking about habits, and I find it impossible to not talk about more. So if you are interested in a very focused way to like tackle a habit, maybe I'm disappointing you a little bit right now. But we've covered a lot so far, and I want to do a little recap. I think it's necessary to talk about more. Because otherwise, we get stuck in this, like, you want to exchange one habit for another and find out, it doesn't work, and then you give up. Anyway, so about the recap. We've looked at maybe we could say, the nature and purpose of habits. The nature of a habit, as far as I'm concerned, is a pattern of behavior based on the repetition of that behavior. And when you think about it this way, you realize that, if you want to talk about it in Buddhist terms, that the habit is empty, because if it is actually an activity repeated, so if the activity ceases, if it stops for whatever reason, the habit dissolves. This is stunning, because I think our feeling is that the habit has some sort of substantial quality or solidity and has taken hold of us and we can't do anything about it. So then, one question that comes from that is like, so if it is that empty, that changeable, why is it so? Why does it feel so solid? All right, and then I think it's useful to look at habits as problem-solving devices. It's like the habit solves a problem. See food, eat it. Feel tired, go to sleep. Now, if you think about it in this way, it's like it's just kind of an automated problem-solving of the organism. So we don't have to be like angry about our habits. It's like that's what sort of our organism is doing to conserve energy and solve problems. All right, so why is it difficult to change habits that are seemingly bad, unwholesome? Because they serve us. They serve us, you could say, in a partial way, because there are these unwholesome side effects, but they serve us, and often the way they serve us has become obscure. We don't see it anymore. We are focused on the bad side effects, but we have a hard time seeing how the habit serves us. And we talked about the structure of habits, and I'm following something very, like basically behaviorism has established, there's a cue, there's a craving, there's a behavior, and there's a reward. So if you take a habit like procrastination, you can map it. You say the cue, any task that appears challenging, craving, not to feel the anxiety associated with that challenge, getting stuck, not knowing how to continue, having to take a lot of time, whatever it is that you experience as challenging about that. So you have the craving not to feel that. Behavior is to do something else. Clean your closet. Go buy something. Whatever. Some alternative behavior that is has a certain reward. And what is the reward? For the time that you are not engaged in doing the task, you are experiencing yourself as free from that anxiety, at least on the surface of it. And then I said, habits like this easily become dysfunctional, so you can add a fifth component here and say like dysfunction, because you are not really making progress on your task. The anxiety associated with it as the deadline gets closer actually increases. So you have more of the problem than you temporarily solved, right? You understand? So that's how a habit that is actually serving you, it's like you don't have to experience this anxiety, becoming dysfunctional because part of its outcome is actually feeding the habit loop. So then it gets kind of out of control. Addictions are that way. If anything that medicates your unwanted feeling is, a substance, and you take that substance, you get a reward, but because it's not really solving the underlying issue, you keep using that substance despite adverse effects. So my relationship to addiction here is like, I'm not judgmental of it at all. It's just a habit that is focused around a substance. If it's a habit that's focused around some sort of process or behavior that is seemingly more benign, the structure of it is not different. But it's important to acknowledge that, if we're addicted to a substance, that it can feel like it's really has a grip on us completely, like the body is starting to crave it on a physiological level. But we're starting to crave certain behaviors on a physiological level too. It's not like it's not coded in your body and in your nervous system. So then, I suggested that we can look at approaching our habits with, as Judson Brewer calls it in his book, Unwinding Anxiety, gears, like first gear, second gear, third gear, like, driving a car. What's good about this metaphor is that you're not just really working with your habit in a productive way when you're in third or fourth gear. You're already working in it when you're in first gear, right? It's sort of the first step, and then there is another gear that makes this approach even more potent. Well, he has 3 gears, right? And we looked at mapping your habits. So this really is more useful than you might think. What's important here is that you are finding the right language that actually fits what is happening. So recently somebody brought up to me the habit of perfectionism. So you could ask yourself, what is the cue? And it's sort of like, if you have this habit, implicitly you know what the cue is. But to say it out loud is actually like, what is the cue? You could say, oh, it's any task. I approach any task with this expectation of doing it really, really well. But when you look more closely, it might not be every task. There might be tasks in your life that you don't approach that way, where you don't get drawn into this. This makes a difference because you're learning something, right? If it's a task related to, school or work, or then you find out it's sort of like where you might be judged by a teacher or a boss. But look, it's not just like that's maybe that way for somebody. It could be something else, like a task at home because you're judged by your partner. If I don't do the dishes just the way she likes it, All right, so it's good to see, like, oh, this is the trigger, this is the cue. What's the craving? The craving is to perform well. And in this example, right? What's the behavior? You make your, maximum effort despite negative consequences. You make your maximum despite being exhausted, neglecting your relationship, not having enough fun in your life. That's the behavior. And you get a reward, you get approval. Now, just like with procrastination, with a habit like this, there is another layer. And I think we should assume that there's always another layer. There's this layer that we've just described, and if you see it clearly, you get a bit of a texture of what you're doing. It's not just happening. You now have, some clarity about it. And my observation is that the deeper layer is always that there is feelings that we don't want to feel. If a somewhat dysfunctional habit is persistent and difficult to shake, it's because there's a feeling you don't want to feel. You are not wanting to feel, in the procrastination example, the feeling of being stuck and not knowing how to solve something and have to, learn something you don't know yet, that discomfort. Or some other discomfort. This is very intimate. This is something that we have to go kind of inward and feel, what is the feeling that comes up together with this cue that I'm not wanting to feel. With anxiety, it is always this it has different shades, so I'm hesitant to say always, but it's a good gateway to assume that there's some sense of uncertainty. Right? How will I be judged? It's unclear. Will it be considered, good enough, what I'm doing? Or, very, physical uncertainties. Can I make it safely home? Will my children, be unharmed? You don't know. The world is not that way. You can't know if they will be unharmed when they are, partying or going on a trip. There's uncertainty there that is irreducible. You cannot really get rid of it. And still, we don't want to feel it, even though it is not really avoidable. We do try to avoid it. So we say, engage in the behavior of worry or rumination, because it feels like we're doing something about a problem. We're figuring out how maybe this outcome, and so you are feeling you're addressing the uncertainty. And you have the reward of feeling that, but the uncertainty is not really addressed, so it becomes dysfunctional. We don't like the feeling of being criticized. Okay, so if that is something you really don't want to feel, you make sure that you try to do everything to not be criticized, Cross all the T's, dot all I. It's exhausting. To really try to avoid that you be criticized, to please everyone. You know this bumper sticker, right? It's like, I can't please everyone. I'm not an avocado. And then I met somebody who was allergic to avocados. This is very disappointing. Not being an avocado isn't, even that's not good enough. Right, so you're mapping it. You get and there's another. Look for the feeling and map the feeling. Sometimes the craving is, as far as I can tell, just not to feel the unwanted feeling. That's the craving. And the reward is not to feel it. Okay, then second gear, disenchantment. Really ask yourself, what am I really getting out of this behavior? What am I really getting? And when you do that honestly, you find you are getting the reward and you're getting these other side effects that you actually don't want. And you can start to weigh those. I wouldn't assume that the unwanted outcomes are always outweighing the wanted outcomes. This is not necessarily the case. You might have such a strong need to avoid a feeling that you actually prefer to continue your habit. But you get a crack. It's like you see more clearly if you're asking, what am I really getting? You're noticing, all these things are. I'm not getting enough sleep because I'm staying up late entertaining myself. I'm gaining weight because I'm eating too much. I am damaging my health because I'm smoking or drinking, or I'm getting behind with my work because I'm procrastinating. And how it feels. The thing is, disenchantment is you need to feel also the unrewarding aspects of your behavior, so that there is a kind of competition between what is rewarding and what is unrewarding. If you notice more as you're standing in front of the fridge, this happens to me, I want to eat something, stand in front of the fridge. I do this practice. It's like, what am I really getting out of this? The unrewarding aspects of the behavior come to me. It's like, okay, I can close the fridge. I mean, for now. It's kind of great. You feel it. You feel the craving to do the behavior, and you feel the craving not to do the behavior. This is interesting. This requires a certain kind of openness, like to actually allow both sides to be there. Don't judge yourself. Study yourself, if you can. And then the third gear is, let's call it awareness, but I think there are two steps there, and I've spoken already about the first step, disidentification. Disidentify from your habit. Just briefly, I find when I employ language like, there's something in me that wants to not do this task. There's something in me that wants to snack late at night. There's something in me that wants to exhaust myself to avoid criticism. Right? What are you getting? You're getting a little space from that thing, and you realize that you are not the habit. The habit, let's say it exists. That's questionable because it's empty. Does it really? That's too philosophical. But it exists. It's there. It happens. But you take the backward step. It's a phrase we're borrowing from Dogen. You take the backward step, and you can say, "There's something in me that wants that, that does that, that feels compelled to do such a thing." But you have stepped back. Again, I hope I'm not boring you with this phrase. It's just so instructive. Suzuki Roshi asks, what is more real to you? Your problem or you yourself? Here, what is more real to you? Your habit or you yourself? What counts more? This is a big deal. Because when we're merged with the habit, we are that thing. So it's like, you're hijacked. It's doing its thing. Notice when you get hijacked. You have no distance. You must worry. You must eat. You must procrastinate. Put your own habits in there. It's like when you're taken over by it, identified, when you wake up, it's like, oh, I did this again. But it's like you didn't do it. You allowed to be identified with that part of you, and that sort of took the steering wheel, or sat in the driver's seat, and just did this until there's a crash. Then you step back. So you could learn to do it earlier. At least see yourself as a wider space in which there are parts with their respective habits. There's something in me that's doing that. Okay. There's something in me that, gets impatiently angry. There's something in me that worries. Now, when I employ this language, and I'm kind of baffled by the fact that Suzuki Roshi says, what is more real to you? Your problem or you yourself? Like, you yourself, what is that? Is it he's a Buddhist, how can he speak about the self, you yourself? But we should allow ourselves to study exactly what's happening. What are you stepping into when you step back? One thing you find when you do this, and you don't just think it, but feel it with your body, there should be a relief. I'm predicting there's a relief when you say, there's something in me that does that. Immediately there's a little bit of a, okay. Now it's workable. Before it wasn't workable. That's me. The only way it was workable that you create another part that, gets very self-judgmental. There's this other voice that you create. How can you be like this? Again, you've done this again. Unbelievable, don't you know better? So now you're merged with your inner critic. And this inner critic is like really angry about this other. So notice what I'm doing is like if I treat them both as parts and I'm stepping back from them, it's like, okay, so there's this habit of, doing behavior X that is unwholesome. And then there is the part that is self-judgmental. That's another habit. Okay. You step back from, you're neither of those. They are habits. So then I gave the example of this person who reported to me, I was walking up the mountain and I've noticed my anxiety regarding how dangerous this trail is, and I went on hiking anyway, and I felt so good about and even empowered, having this wider mind that was observing the anxiety. So I was able to walk despite my anxiety and watch it, and felt good about myself being able to watch my anxiety and not be ruled by it and have to turn around and feel, inadequate and so forth. So what are we stepping into? We're stepping into an observing function of our own mind. It's always there, that possibility. There's a kind of it's so difficult to say. I mean, for me, difficult to say. You know yourself completely. You don't know how to conceptually describe yourself completely. Yeah, so we could say like you don't have conceptual knowledge, complete conceptual knowledge of yourself. But this mind that I'm pointing to is like, it just notices everything that's going on. It may not have words for it, but it's just noticing it. It knows it in that way. To step into that the way you already know yourself, and then are with some detachment able to observe what's going on, and maybe also actually find language, but that's another step, another craft, is actually satisfying. Now I want to invite you to do a little experiment with me right now. So allow yourself to just watch your breath and settle into a kind of meditative mind. But don't close your eyes, just kind of like look into the field in front of you. Use soft eyes so that you don't look at anything in particular, but instead at everything all at once. Just let your visual attention, how could we say, extend all the way to the edges of your visual field. So you see everything all at once. And as you're holding that, notice that there are things out there that can be seen, if you were to focus, which you're not doing. And you also notice that there is that which sees. There's a kind of source of your attention. Maybe you can access that source by putting your putting some attention on the back of your eyes, as if you are going to the source from which the seeing occurs. And now if you are seeing, maybe not very clearly, because you are practicing soft eyes. But if you de-emphasize that you are seeing stuff and just notice that there is attention that is ready and willing to receive visual input, then you could maybe notice that this attention is able to receive sound as well. It can receive visuals, and it can receive sound. And it can receive body feeling and smells. And it can receive thoughts. And this, what I want to call now, this attentional field, let that attentional field now surround you and come all the way to the back. It's not just in front of you in this visual field that has boundaries, but let it come all the way around you so that you can also feel it in the back. And you can feel it below you. It's like you would have to allow yourself to feel down into the ground and maybe even below the ground. And you're feeling above yourself up to the sky. There's a whole sphere of attention that is extending in all directions. And not only is it picking up things that are outside, it's also simultaneously picking up everything that's inside. It completely penetrates the visual field, the oral field, and also your own body. There's no division there between inside and outside. If you start thinking about stuff, it collapses. So as you're listening to me, my thoughts that I'm sharing with you, don't listen to them too intently. just let them deliver their instruction, and then let them come, let them go. If you linger and wonder about it, the field collapses into that thought. Weird. When it collapses, because you're getting too interested in something, too focused, too identified, that's okay. You can just go back and widen out, like I just described. In our practice, we notice that this field is somewhat fragile. Now, it's not fragile as a reality. It is experienced by us as fragile when we get drawn into something attentionally. Then the field, the word I use for myself is like, it collapses. Now you're in that tunnel. Now you're in the tunnel of that thought. Now you're in the tunnel of that emotion. Now you're in the tunnel of that habit. Now you're in the tunnel of that worry. You could go, if the pathway is not so clear to you how to widen out again, you could follow the instruction that I just gave. Start with, you need to stop, but then start with the visual. Let the focus go. There's another focus. Let the focus on visual go and include attention as such. Let it surround you. Let it be down and let it be up. Let it be a whole sphere. Let it be simultaneously penetrating outside and inside in an undivided fashion. It's like you could instruct yourself to do that. If you start to have a feel for that, meditation is just go there and rest. Hang out there. It's like make that pathway more and more familiar and then hang out there. Now, with regard to habits, I was very intrigued when I looked at Judson Brewer's instructions, where he, and clearly, he's very successful in treating smoking, which is one of the hardest addictions to break. Maybe the hardest is what he says, is incredible. That's what the data seems to show. And anxiety treats those things, and overeating. And he says, if the brain, I don't talk about the brain because I've never seen a brain and I don't know how to study the brain. I study the mind, but I don't dismiss that you can learn something from studying the brain. If the brain is conditioned to a particular reward, the reward of your habit, right? He says, it will need a bigger reward in order to let that go and do something different. And so he advocates for discovering curiosity as a bigger reward. And it's almost like, and he's doing studies about curiosity, how people feel about curiosity. And it's like, okay, so mindfulness, as I implied earlier, is this you're using the observing, knowing function of your mind to just note what's going on. That's mindfulness. You form the intention to bring attention to sensation without thinking about it, just noting it. Yeah, you're using that noticing function, observing function of your mind. Then he says, there are two kinds of curiosity. There's the curiosity he calls deprivation curiosity. It's the curiosity that wants to know because it is so unsatisfying not to know. You must know what this is. If you have a problem with your body, you must know what's going on here. Like, get a medical diagnosis. If you don't have it, you freak out. If you don't know what this is. This is a pretty narrow, contracted form of curiosity. And then he says there's interest curiosity, which is just wide open, like, oh, what's going on here? I'm intrigued. I'm interested. He reports he's taught a team of athletes, I think, after they're studying themselves, to use the word what's going on here? And the study is like, oh, people have a positive feeling about this kind of curiosity. I'm avoiding this task again. What's going on? Here I am, standing in front of the fridge again. I wonder why. So I find this very very amusing. Like, I thought this is cool, right? But there's a part of me that was actually quite skeptical. It's like, really? That's all the reward that you need? That extra reward is just and that will do the trick? As an experienced sesshin rat, I've noticed when pain comes up, that margin between deprivation curiosity and interest curiosity is like that it's a slippery slope. It's like I'm approaching my pain with like very open, what's going on there? But if it goes on for 45 minutes, I'm slipping back into the contraction and like, hey, I need to know what's going on here. Like, how can I fix this? So to stay with this open-minded curiosity is actually it can be difficult under difficult circumstances. Under circumstances where you're not affected very much, it's easy. Oh, I wonder, what's this? So my study was actually, what are the qualities of this field of awareness that I have suggested you enter in this way just a few minutes ago? And we all have to find out for ourselves what this is, but it has to me, very interesting, rewarding qualities. When you study, it's like, oh, this is Buddha mind. This is what everyone's talking about. This mind is open. It's inclusive. It's willing to face what's unpredictable. It's resilient in a way that is actually really surprising. It's like not resilient in the sense like, oh, I'm going to be a tough person and I can take anything. No, it's very soft and resilient. It's like it's already able to experience everything. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like it is always already experiencing, so it is like it's super resilient. It's like afterwards something closes down and says like, I don't want to experience this, but initially that mind experiences everything. It's just completely willing to take everything, including pain. absolutely amazing. It's like you don't have to train yourself to be resilient from this point of view. You just have to merge with the already existing resilience of that mind. This is what's rewarding about walking up the mountain and noticing your anxiety and not doing anything about it. There you have resilience. It is empowering beyond anything. It is alive. This is my favorite discovery, so put it in the title of my book. It's vibrating with aliveness. You can feel it. It's like, I don't know what to say. Like I liken it to champagne bubbles, it's like vibrant with, color and sound. But it's like deeper inside of that experience, there is that vibrancy. And it's joyous. It is, like I like to say, there's the joy of being alive for no other reason than being alive. Like even if you're going through a hard time, but you are, widening out in this field, there's the buoyancy of being alive. You've got to sort of like widen out into this field to the degree that you're able, and then sort of like feel the quality of it. Not in a graspy way, it's like, oh no, I'm going to bag aliveness. No, just feel it. Feel that there is that. It's like a hidden texture of this openness. I recently was musing about the phrase basic goodness that Trungpa Rinpoche introduced to English Buddhism, English-speaking Buddhism. But what do I know? Maybe it came from somewhere else. Now many people use it, and I'm like, goodness, like, isn't that very dualistic? Good, bad. Don't we want to get away from that? But if you put that aside, which is just a stupid philosophical concern, it's like if you feel into this field, I'm doing it right, there is the goodness of being alive. Like even if you have a lot of trouble, there's the goodness of being alive. If you stop feeling that, there's a little bit of trouble, But mostly we feel it enough to want to live. There's freedom. There's like lots of possibility in a wide open field. So I want to invite you to do that. Feel those qualities. Those reward, now I want to connect it to the habits and then close. Those rewarding qualities of awareness. Because when you're there standing in front of the fridge, like metaphorically, right? Many of you don't stand in front of the fridge, not like me, late at night. But you may stand in front of something else. There it is. Your habit is about to kick in. You're there. This time you're there, noticing it. You've disidentified. Your awareness is there. You can do like the what's going on there. You could also just feel the aliveness of that field. Just feel the freedom of like, I don't have to do this. I could do something else. And how exhilarating is that? There's warmth there and kindness. There's the ability to resonate with others. That's why this field is talked about as inherently compassionate. But there is also the ability to resonate with your own parts. Like you have you feel a kind, warm feeling to the part that wants to not just stand in front of the fridge, but get something out of it. You're like, oh yeah, I know you. It's like, you don't have to be harsh. It's not necessary. That field actually is like, you could give in and do the thing that you don't want to do, and just watch yourself with compassion and say like, oh, okay, I'm doing it, but now at least I'm not angry about myself. You get that? So I'm encouraging you, feel those qualities that I'm naming. I'm going to send them to you as a list. And the study could be, as you're taking in those rewarding qualities of the field of awareness itself, the need to medicate whatever negative, problematic feelings you have with the behavior is actually kind of like, it's not so necessary anymore. You might still want to do it. It may stay with you for the rest of your life, that you at certain times want to do it, but it just feels not so necessary, because there is this deeper reward of feeling your own aliveness, freedom, warmth, resilience, etc.